India, serving as a pastor and as a Psalm catalyst for the Indian Pakistani diaspora and for Interfaith Contexts. Recently, Dr. Tia honored me by inviting to be part of a wonderful group, although I'm a long member of this one, but with this responsibility as a coordinator for art in interfaith context. I welcome you, Khushamadid, welcome Ji Ayano. I'm using all my contextual phrases to everyone. And today we are honored to have a prolific scholar and a sister where her name is Zeyneb Sayilgan. She is a PhD and she is the Muslim scholar of the Institute for Islamic, Christian and Jewish Studies in Baltimore, Maryland in the United States, where her research centers around Islamic theology and spirituality, one of my favorite topic, and Christian-Muslim relations, and the interaction of religion and integration. She is also the host of the podcast on being Muslim. Welcome, Dr. Zeyneb, our host, and all our distinguished guests here around the world. And today, before further ado, I will just give you some preliminary, arranging how we are going to arrange this. So the first part is we are going to read Psalm 19. So Dr. Zeyneb will read in, I think, in Hebrew. And then while we were talking before starting this session, because I read Urdu, which is a Persian and Arabic dialect. So, and we thought I will read in Urdu, but she then said, because I sing this psalm, so probably I'll be singing. So bear with me. I'm not a professional singer, but I'm a psalm lover. And so this Psalm 19, how Indian Pakistani Christians sing this psalm, what is the melody and tune. So welcome, Dr. Zeyneb, and we will start our session right now without further ado. So right after a session, when Dr. Zeyneb's presentation, you will have an opportunity to write a question in the chat box, or if in case we miss, you can please raise your hand for a question, and you can ask question to our presenter. But however, without any delay, let's jump in. And Dr. Zeyneb, welcome.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Sarwar, for this wonderful introduction. And I can't thank Dr. Tia enough for having me back again. It's such a pleasure to be with you all. And she's doing amazing work on bringing us all together and building this interfaith platform. So I'm delighted to be with you all, and thank you for making time to be here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen in order to get to the Arabic. Actually, unfortunately I don't speak Hebrew, although Arabic has a lot of commonality with Hebrew. It's a Semitic language, as you know. But what I will do is I'm going to read the Arabic translation of Psalm 19, and then we'll have the blessing and the wonderful opportunity to hear how the psalm is chanted, sung by Dr. Sarwar, which I just got a little taste, and I could listen to him forever. So let me go ahead and just click on this link, because I was only able to let me just enlarge this. I was only able to copy a portion of it, so I thought I'm just going to go on the on this web page to offer the Arabic translation. And there are slight variations depending on which translation you use. So I'm going to go ahead to read the psalm in Arabic, and then we'll listen to Dr. Sarwar. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most compassionate, most merciful. السماوات تحكي عن مجد الله وتعرض قبة السماء عمل يديه كل يوم يمرر خبرا لليوم الذي يليه وكل ليلة تعلن معرفتها لليلة التي تليها ما من كلمات تقال أو من صوت يسمع غير أن أصواتهم وصلت إلى جميع أنحاء الأرض، وانتقلت كلماتهم إلى أقاصي العالم. جعل الله خيمة الشمس في السماء، وهي كالعريس الخارج من خيمته، وهي مبتهجة كرياضي متأهب للسباق. تبدأ السباق من أفق السماء، وتركض حتى النهاية، ولا شيء يختبئ من حرها. شريعة الله نقية ترد الروح، شهادات الله موثوقة تجعل البسيط حكيما، فرائد الله مستقيمة تسعد القلب، وصايا الله ظاهرة تنير العيون، خوف الله نقي إلى الأبد يبقى، أحكام الله صحيحة عادلة كلها. خوف الله نقي إلى الأبد يبقى، أحكام الله صحيحة عادلة كلها، هي أثمن من ذهب كثيرا نقي، كلها أشهى من العسل الذي يقطر من أقراص الشهد. وعنى عبدك يحذر بها، وفي اتباعها مكافأة عظيمة. من يدرك كل أخطائه، فاحفظني طاهرا يا الله من الأخطاء الخفية. أحمني أنا عبدك من أفكار الكبرياء، لا تدعها تتسلط علي، فأكون بلا شائبة، وتحرر من خطايا كثيرة. يا الله يا صخرتي وفادي، اقبل كلمات فمي وأفكار قلبي. So now I invite Dr. Sarwar to share the Urdu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zeyneb. And would you please kindly share this link to everyone on the chat screen? And if you allow me to share my screen, and then if we just go back to the main screen.
So shall I stop sharing?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, here you go. And would you kindly share that link on the chat box? And meanwhile, I am sharing this English Psalm link to everyone. While I'll be reading, then everyone can see actually and read English by themselves. So I have just shared the English link. So everyone, would you please kindly, if you like to see what I will be singing or reading, so I'm not taking much time because it's a 14 verses. I'll just sing first 2 verses, and Dr. Zeyneb is going to share the Arabic link which she just recited, and I'll be singing verse 1 and 2 only from Psalm 19, which you can read the provided link in English as well. So let's go. I will just recite the Psalm 19, first 2 verses, and I hope you will be blessed by this recitation. So how Indian Punjabi speaking Christians sing this or recite this Psalm. Verse 1. आसमान बयान कर दे खुदा दे कम सारे, कर दे हैं रब दी वडियाई, कर दे हैं रब दी वडियाई, आसमान बयान कर दे खुदा दे कम सारे. Verse 2. दिन करदे रहंदे दिनां नाल गल्लां, दिन करदे रहंदे दिनां नाल गल्लां, रात बख्शदी रात नूं दानाई, रात बख्शदी रात नूं दानाई, आसमान बयान कर दे खुदा दे कम सारे. So this is the whole repetition chanting or the melody which we sing in Punjabi language, but also I'll just read first 3 verses in Urdu, which is a dialect of Persian and Arabic also, as Dr. Zeyneb has recited, and then we will give to Dr. Zeyneb to unpack for us this morning. So, what's number one? आसमान खुदा का जलाल जाहिर करता है और फिजा उसकी दस्तकारी दिखाती है. वर्स 2, दिन से दिन बात करता है और रात को रात हिकमत सिखाती है. वर्स 3, न बोलना है न कलाम, ना उनकी आवाज़ सुनाई देती है. वर्स 4, उनका सुर सारी ज़मीन पर और उनका कलाम दुनिया की इंतहा तक पहुंचा है. उसने आफताब के लिए उनमें खैमा लगाया है जो दुल्हे की मानिंद अपने खिलवत खाने से निकलता है और पहलवान की तरह अपनी दौड़ में दौड़ने को खुश है. दिस इज द वर्ड ऑफ द लॉर्ड. I'll now give a platform or mic to Dr. Zeyneb to share with us and enlighten us through the Psalm 19 and creation. Dr. Zeyneb, over to you.
Okay, sorry. So I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, it's there.
Okay. So again, I could listen to your recitation forever. I don't know how it's called, recitation or singing. For me, I can imagine that Prophet David, or Dawood, peace be upon him, as he called this in the Quran. I can imagine that there is such a resemblance because the Quran praises him that he had such a beautiful voice, and that actually, the creation joined him in the praise and remembrance of God. So what I'm going to do, I want to also set from, note from the outset that I'm not an expert on the Psalms. So we have Dr. Sarwar here, and he is, as you can see, he's like a treasure in that regard, and very grateful to be learning from him also today. Fun fact, as I was, when I was serving as a full-time faculty at Virginia Theological Seminary, which is Episcopal Seminary, my Anglican friends will appreciate that, Episcopal Seminary in the United States, I found my re-entry in the Psalms because it's, was had portions of it in the Book of Common Prayer, and it was as part of our student formation group, once a week we would gather in the faculty homes, and I was, I was joining the students in reading the Psalms through the Book of Common Prayer. So I'm very grateful that I was able to re-engage with them in that regard. But what I'm planning to do for the next 30 minutes or so, 20 minutes or so, is just reiterate maybe some of my, the previous speakers have alluded to that, and repetition yields results. It's good pedagogically, but just to also emphasize that the Psalms have an important status in the Quran. They are called the Zabur. And the Quran talks about the fact that it shares a Near Eastern kinship with the previous scriptures. So as you can see here in these verses and many other verses, like in Quran chapter 4, verse 163, where for Muslims, God says, indeed God has sent revelation to you, O Prophet, as we sent revelation to Noah and the prophets after him. We also sent revelation to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and his descendants, as well as Jesus, Job, Jonah, Aaron, and Solomon. And to David, we gave the Psalms. So just to stress that the Quran is stressing this chain of revelation. And as I'm, hearing, as I was engaging with the Psalms, I hear a lot of the common themes reiterated that I would like to focus on today in this particular Psalm. And then also in another chapter of the Quran, in chapter 34, we hear the Quran say, indeed, we granted David a great privilege from us, commanding all mountains echo his hymns and the birds as well. We made iron moldable for him. So again, the Quran refers to Prophet or King David as a messenger of God, which has, of course, a very high status in Islam. Prophecy or messengerhood is not something that you can choose or can acquire. It's God's special blessing bestowed on a person. He chooses the person as an example of piety and devotion. and as an example for the community, as a human model to emulate and imitate. For Muslims, prophets in that regard have a very high status. They venerate Prophet David, or Dawood, as called in the Quran. David is special. Prophet David, peace be upon him, is special because he was also granted kingship. So he was one of the very few messengers of God who also was granted a kingdom, who basically also modeled, this role of how to be a king in this world. And now I'm thinking about the royal family, of course, and it's kind of interesting how this now is a coincidence. But Prophet David is elevated in the Quran as a king and also a messenger of God. One of the blessings that he received was deep knowledge of God and wisdom of sound judgment. And we know that is really a blessing, because sometimes we are overwhelmed with decision makings. And it's a special blessing when you know in every situation how to act, how to perform, how to conduct yourself. So that's a very special blessing, a gift from God that Prophet David received. For Muslims, of course, is easy to have a high regard of their messengers, because the Quran always talks with them from a very positive approach angle. So they are always seen as human, as these high examples of moral piety. And then, as we've seen in the previous verse, that the mountains and birds and forests rush to join him in divine remembrance. That they, one of the things that the tradition mentions is Prophet David had a beautiful voice, and as he was remembering God in his pleasant voice, the creation would join him in divine remembrance, which is called zikr, of course, in Islam. So, in divine remembrance is an act of worship and the highest way of honoring God. So that, I think, is very beautiful. And as I was listening to Dr. Sarwar, I think that this is probably how it would have sounded, right? Like in that particular language that Prophet David spoke, this kind of way that elevates your spirit, and that the creation would join him. For Muslims, also, Prophet David is special as they remember him in their ritual life. So every Monday and Thursday, Muslims are called to perform an obligatory voluntary fast. So many Muslims actually fast on Mondays and Thursdays, and that is called the fast of Prophet David. So there is a tradition by Prophet Muhammad that I cited here. It says, the most beloved prayer to God is that of David, and the most beloved fasts to God are those of David. He used to sleep for half of the night and then pray for 1/3 of the night, and again sleep for its 6th part, and used to fast on alternate days. So his prayer life and his practice of fasting is something that is reiterated in the ritual lives of Muslims, which is beautiful, and his memory is kept alive and honored in that way. So when I was reading Psalm 19, and I'm going to only focus on the verses 1 and 6, there were certain things that really spoke to me as a Muslim, and that's what I wanted to do. I want to offer a Quranic lens on these verses, on the Psalms, again, the Zabur, which I think is a common theme in the divine scriptures. And as Dr. Sarwar already, I think we haven't heard in the English translation, you read, for example, here, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. So unfortunately, I'm not going to focus on the whole psalm, but again, there were things that spoke to me that the Quran also stresses. And again, it's this sibling relationship also that the Quran wants to establish, that it shares a lot of themes with the other scriptures, with the revelations. So when for example, if you go back here, that the heavens declare the glory of God, what is evident to me here, that the Psalms talk about the creation being a living, breathing and speaking entity. They speak constantly in their particular language of disposition. There's a language that they put forth that is not necessarily always understood by human beings, but they speak to us, that they reveal knowledge. What is that knowledge, that revelation that is put forth? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And again, their voice and their words, that we understand that the creation is speaking to us about God, revealing something about the divine, sharing knowledge with us. And so in the Islamic tradition, we have three sources of divine revelation. The messengers, like Prophet David, obviously the human exemplars. But then we also have the scriptures, the written revelation, right? The codified text. And then most importantly, what the Psalms, or this particular Psalm 19 is focusing on, the creation. The creation is what the Quran calls a book of the universe, the book of the universe, filled with signs of God. Again, the technical term is ayah, sign. And a sign has, as the name says, a significance. It says something. It's basically conveying a message, right? And so when we focus on these three sources of divine revelation, the Quran speaks about nature or the cosmos as being a book of the universe, Kitab al-Kainat. And oftentimes what the Quran is focusing on, it's like any other scripture, is a very cosmological book, cosmological scripture, in inviting the reader to reflect on the universe, to reflect on every creature, to ponder the signs of God. Every living being is a sign that conveys knowledge of God, declaring the glory of God, praising God. And I've just to share a couple of verses here from the Quran that reiterate this theme that is appearing in the Psalms. The seven heavens and the earth, as it says here in Quran chapter 17, the seven heavens and the earth and whatever is in them exalt him or glorify him. And there's not a thing except that it exalts God by his praise, but you do not understand their way of exalting. Indeed, he is ever forbearing and forgiving. Again, a very similar theme, a very common theme that Psalm 19 is conveying to us, that that nature, that creation is constantly glorifying God, giving revelation of God, praising God, having a voice, declaring God's glory. So it's very, very similar, very, very similar themes. And then again, whatever is in the heavens and earth exalts God, and he is exalted in might the wise. So whatever is in the heavens and earth, so it's a very comprehensive description. Every being in the universe is a sacred being that is speaking to us, that is conveying God's message, that is displaying the qualities of God, right? And then we see in other verses, the stars and the trees bow down in submission. So in response to God's love and sovereignty, what you have as a response by the creation is this utter giving, this utter self-submission to God, this surrender of the creation to the divine. And then as a result, of course, what is displayed in the creation is harmony and a symphony of voices and a balance, right? So it's a very important thing that spoke to me as I was reading this beautiful psalm. And then again, many other verses, but here a couple more. And your Lord inspired the beasts, make your homes in the mountains, the trees, and what people construct, right? Like communicating, inspiring the beasts to conduct themselves in a certain way. And then talking about the birds in the next verse, have they not seen the birds glide in the open sky? None holds them up except God. Indeed, these are signs for those who believe. So again, signs. They are all symbols, signs of the divine. They're talking to us, displaying through their lives, through their sacred disposition, something about the divine. So it's up to the human being to pause and ponder and contemplate these signs, to reflect deeply. And in fact, in many of the verses of the Quran, you read basically, do they not reflect? Why don't they ponder about the creation? Why don't they contemplate the creation? So the job or the responsibility of the human being is to not just look, but to read, right? And so this chapter, for example, it says, do you not see that to God bow down in submission all those in the heavens and all those on the earth, as well as the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the trees, and all living beings, as well as many humans. So in response to God's greatness and glory, you see every being in the universe, right, surrendering to the divine. And we are drawn to this harmony and beauty in creation for these reasons, because within the multiplicity of creation, within this huge diversity of the creation, we see a oneness displayed. And that oneness is the oneness of God. So they are all basically in their unique way coming together, surrendering to God's glory, but then also declaring God's oneness. So that declaration that there's one God that brings us all together, because otherwise we are not able to communicate and coordinate. There will be anarchy and chaos. So I want to invite you to engage in a little thought exercise with me, something that I try to cultivate in my own spiritual life. We all know, or some of you may know, that the first verse that was revealed in the Quran, it was in chapter 96, I believe, but the first verse that was revealed in the Quran was Iqra, which basically means read. So the first invitation that came down to the early Muslim community, to the Prophet Muhammad first and foremost, was to read, right? And we as human beings, we are constantly growing in knowledge. We are always curious. We are always engaged in reading, in understanding, in reflection. But how to read? How to read the events and the beings that surround us? Now, the answer in the Quran is read in the name of your Lord. Read in the name of your Lord. Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq. Your Lord who has created you. So the first revelation and the reason why early Muslims were so invested in seeking knowledge was to seek sacred knowledge about the divine in the universe, whether the area of astronomy or chemistry or biology, or medicine or whatever, because any knowledge that was gained was sacred knowledge that would draw them closer to God. So the invitation in the Quran stands up until today that everybody is invited to look at the world, to look at the events in the world, to look at every being, and read in the name of the Lord. So what does that practically look like if we think about that everything is a sign? So I'm sure many of us, I would guarantee that all of us are nature lovers. We all enjoy a walk in nature. We all feel there's this sense of tranquility and serenity, a sense of peace. And, it's very well established that taking nature walks is good for us, good for our health. What is it that draws us to nature? What is it that connects us so deeply to something that is so ancient? Now, from a Quranic perspective and from the perspective of the Psalms, the Zabur, it's because the signs of God are displayed in nature, right? There's something of the divine imprints, God's divine qualities are displayed in the book of the universe. And it's this holiness that, again, from a theological perspective, draws people close and provides them with a sense of peace. Now, again, the fall season is upon us. It's a beautiful season and time of the year where a lot of us are reflecting, reviewing the year, looking back, thinking about the harvest of the year, thinking about where we are headed, what we've done this past year. So it's a very, very gentle, very contemplative season. Every season has its unique beauty. But as you walk into nature, and if you look around you, there's an invitation again to read. So I picked up this is a personal picture of mine. I just picked up this leaf and I was just drawn to it for obvious reasons. So I was trying to read the signs of God in this beautiful sacred being, right? Everything is a sacred sign. Everything is declaring the glory of God. So I tried to engage in this act of Iqra, reading in the name of our Lord. And so what I was discovering is that every leaf has a shape, that somebody is shaping this leaf, right? Somebody takes time, puts attention, puts creativity in this leaf. And you see that one of the names of God is Al-Musawwir. The Quran talks about God being the shaper of every creation, of every being. God gives gives divine attention to every being. Nobody is neglected and no one is left out, right? So you see every corner, and as I look closer, you see that there is a vein into every little corner. This leaf is nourished by water and all minerals, even into the tiniest little corners, right? And then as I was reflecting on that, I was also making connection with my own life. I said, if God is not neglectful of this tiny leaf and providing nourishment and water and life-giving minerals to each and every tiny little corner of its being, how can God then neglect me? God is not neglectful of any being in the universe. And that is something that really cultivates a sense of gratitude. So one of the other names of God, or this leaf declaring that God is the most gentle, the most kind, the most compassionate, because this leaf was somebody really cared about the leaf. Somebody put love and energy and compassion. In order for this leaf to exist, constellations of the stars need to be in place and compelled into a certain position. And one of the names of God is Al-Jabbar, the subduer, the compeller. He puts all these stars and all the seasons and all the creation into a certain constellation for the tree to come into being, for the leaf to come into existence. You need rain, you need sunshine, you need minerals, you name it. You need the planets to be in a certain balance for this leaf to exist. So what kind of message is the leaf conveying to us then? The glory of God, the greatness of God, that he's not only the shaper, the creator, but he creates with compassion. He is the nourisher, providing life-giving water, providing life-giving minerals. He is the one who provides support to every tree to flourish, right? What else do I see? What else? As I'm thinking about the Psalmic invitation, or the passage that everything is declaring the glory of God, praising him, voicing, right? So this is the act of Iqra, like reading in the name of your Lord. What do we see if we can cultivate the sacred outlook? And then, of course, the preserver. God preserves and honors the leaf by leaving sacred imprints in my mind and in my heart, in my memory. This leaf is not going to vanish. In a certain physical sense, yes, but God honors the leaf by leaving sacred imprints in every human being's mind and memory. So in a sense, it's also eternalized. God is also the one who preserves. One of the names of God is the protector and the preserver, Al-Hafiz, right? The DNA of this leaf is preserved, right? This tiny little leaf. And so how come then that if God protects and preserves the DNA of every little being in this universe, but then allows the human being to vanish from the earth or go into non-existence? So these are the questions that invite us for reflection. So the God is the preserver and protector who leaves sacred imprints of the leaf in my mind and in my photo camera on my cell phone. Now I share it with you, right? And also our urge to preserve and protect. We also see that we have that also that divine quality within us. We want to preserve our beautiful memories, or how God honors every being in preserving its importance. It's not forgotten, it's not neglected, it's documented, it's recorded, right? And so the crown of the creation, the human being, and it's not to in a way to think of it in an arrogant way, but in a humble way that invites us into humility, that this should also make us think, if God honors this leaf by preserving its life cycle through the memories of human beings or through other ways, then of course my memory, my existence will hopefully also be preserved, right? Also, what else do I see? I see patience. One of the names of God is El Sabur, the patient, the most patient one. God is never in a rush to create things. Yes, he has the power to create out of nothing, ex nihilo, that's also established in Islamic theology, but a lot of time God creates out of causes. God creates with patience and gentleness. You see all these like different nuances of color and beauty, right? And so as the leaf changes and ages gracefully, patience is displayed. That change requires patience, growth requires patience. So it's also an invitation for me to slow down, to age gracefully, to embrace that, right? So a lot of things that I can learn just from a simple leaf if I pay attention and allow myself to be listening to the sacred beings that constantly voice the glory of God. So this is how we think of it from a non-abstract level, right? And then God is the living Al-Hayy. God is also the one who creates death. Now the Quran asserts that death is also a creation of God with design and purpose and wisdom. Now, the death of a leaf is also designed and created, but again, it's not complete non-existence, because as I alluded earlier, the existence of the leaf continues. And then there's also the resurrection. I know that next season, the leaf and all what it has to offer will be preserved and comes back to existence. So, and then again, that how it also flatters my eyes, just that I, was, had this sense of awe and it cultivated a sense of just this beauty. I mean, God is El Jamil, he is beautiful, and he displays his beauty constantly in the creation. And I could go on and on forever, but this is just a little spiritual exercise that how the book of the universe invites us to ponder about the glory of God, to think about the oneness of God in a deeper way, and allow ourselves to be transformed in that regard. And I invite everybody, do this every time when you have a spread on the table. Look at the orange, look at the packaging. This is practical spirituality. Think about the flavors, that this, we all talk about mindfulness these days, but here in Islam and all the other sacred traditions, it's about connecting to the sacred, right? And cultivating a contemplative outlook on life, and being, a sacred outlook, basically, so that you find yourself in the sacred presence of God, right? Thinking about the different flavors of what you eat, but also the blessing of this piece of flesh that is in our mouth, that has been designed in a way that makes you discern millions of flavors. If somebody brings me a fruit from, I don't know, Indonesia, that I've never eaten, I will be I'll be able to discern its distinguished flavor. And that's the miracle of how the human being has been created, in order to ponder and reflect more deeply about the blessings of God. And that kind of sense, that kind of cultivation, the gift and art of paying attention and developing a contemplative worldview, as the Psalms and the Quran invites us, cultivates a deep sense of gratitude. And, really, we again know, very well established, that cultivating gratitude, just counting our blessings, how good that is for our hearts and minds and for our overall well-being. So in summary, the common theme that I discovered in the Psalms, in this particular Psalm, and in the Quran, for me, both divine revelations, divine scriptures that Muslims have to affirm, because it's part of the Muslim creed to affirm the Psalms, the Torah, the Bible, and the Injil, the New Testament, and the Quran together as a package. And this type of divine revelation invites for deeper attention and reflection as we look into the signs of God in the book of the universe that point to divine compassion, wisdom, beauty, and goodness. We are drawn also to cultivating a sense of awe and wonder. And that's actually a prophetic prayer. I hope now with the season and all seasons that we increase our sense of awe and wonder in the universe. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zeyneb, for your inspiring, intriguing, and kind of, I would say that, taking us beyond from our box and seeking that. Although I know Psalm 19 is such a fascinating psalm, we cannot cover whole in a one setting. However, you have comprehensively designed it and share with us. Thank you very much. And now this is the moment for all of us to ask questions, to comment, to share. So there are two ways we can do that. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, you can write your comment or question or reflection, something based on this presentation in a chat box, or beside, as well as you can raise a hand and ask that your question. So meanwhile, when you ask and speak, unmute your mic, and while other one is speaking, please you can mute your mics when someone is speaking. Thank you very much. Over to all of you for your reflection, question, comments.
It's beautiful, and I'll cheer you on. And I think what I think is the aim, as my own personal reading, is to develop this type of eco-spirituality, because especially in our crisis right now, what is lacking is that sacred worldview, that transcendent, that is anchored in the transcendence, in the holy. Because once you are disconnected from the holiness, it's very easy to abuse and exploit and misuse the sacred resources of the earth. I think it just has, and it's beautiful. In the first part, you're invited to reflect on the macrocosmos, on the creation, but then it takes it in, right? As you just beautifully described, what is now my call? It's to conduct myself in harmony with the creation. And I think oftentimes we try to think about the climate crisis as in a solution. When we think of solutions, we think, oh, just a technological fix and economic fix will do. But the reality is, it's also a reflection of our spiritual crisis, where we started to have a materialistic lifestyle and thought, okay, we can just do whatever we want. But if you really look around you and see everything as a living, breathing, sacred entity, that they are sacred in themselves and not just important for your survival, then I think your outlook and your conduct will change. I deeply believe that. And I think a lot of our religious communities are wrestling with that, because we, with the modern and materialistic lifestyle, a lot of that sacredness, basically has gotten lost. And now it's our call to revive that. When I go with my children to a park and say, this ant is a sacred being of God, is a servant of God, is a worshiper of God, glorifying God, that has a different taste than, okay, it's an animal, it's, and this is a natural. It's just it just echoes differently for me. So I wholeheartedly acknowledge that after testifying, observing the macro world, now we are also called to live in harmony, and we will be judged. You know, the Quran says that all beings will testify either against us or for us. You know, the trees, they are not just standing around for nothing. They look at us. They know how we conduct ourselves. And so, yes, I think it has to be read within the creation, within nature. And it's that is an ethical, religious imperative, I would say. That's an excellent point you're raising. And I agree, there is a danger again, and we have that, of course, in the history where you know, the human being then says, okay, I'm the crown of the creation, or I'm the steward of the creation, or steward of God, and now like everything is subservient to me or servant to me. I think again, you know, agreeing with you, what we are called to do is humility and responsibility, because of the importance of us as human beings. Our looks, our deeds and actions in the universe have such a great impact, negative or positive, that we have to be overly cautious. In a way, when you were describing, Gregory, of Nissa's, you know, collecting the words and gathering, now if I'm thinking of the table of that you know, table spread that I shared. So we are taking everything that in the universe into our bodies, right? Whether we talk about minerals, oxygen, vegetables, fruits, meat, everything that becomes unified in us. And in fact, everything works for us. I mean, human beings are the center of the universe, but in a, you know, again, humility and responsibility stressed. Now, when everything is working for me, right? When everything is unified within me, again, there's a process happening. So if I'm taking in an apple, or I'm taking in fruits, they are transformed into a higher level of existence, the human existence, which means they are part of my being, part and parcel of my being and existence now. So everything that I take in, I've gathered these signs of God within me, but they now call on me to uphold their sacredness and uphold the glory of God in a way that is, again, in harmony with the creation. So I would say, in contrary to the idea that you can do whatever your fancy is, it's basically, wow, all the universe is working for me, and I humbly acknowledge it, and I have to responsibly affirm their sacrifice, and have to work for them and with them, and uphold the dignity and sacredness, as opposed to you work for me and I can just do whatever I want in the creation. No, and we see that this is not working. Once we are disconnected from nature, once we are living in a way that is disconnected from nature, we actually harm ourselves, and we see the repercussions of that now. So I would say there is a thought that, yes, we gather everything within us out of multiplicity oneness, right? You take the multiplicity of creation, you take in oxygen, you take in fruit, you take in vegetables, you take in everything that you need for your physical survival, for your well-being. But that calls you for responsibility towards the creation. You can't deny their work and their sacrifice and their labor, right? So I think for me, rather than being a vicegerent of God in creation and say, I'm so great, I humbly acknowledge that all of this is working for me, and now my response is to also work to maintain their sacredness.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing this Hebrew perspective about, because words are limited, but also word has a power of creation. And I was wondering, because sometime as a musician, when I see that sometime when you just hum or melody, or you just communicate emotions, without any words, that is powerful. However, we find out that communication experts are finding that there are 12 communication codes now, where there are verbal and non-verbals. While the social sciences and communication experts are exploring now, which Psalm 19 declares centuries ago, that you need to go and explore, as Dr. Zeyneb says, that Ikra Bismi Rabbal Zi Khalaq, that read in the name of the Lord, explore, go and find out. So I think this is a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I think growth is part of the universe. You know, everything has a beginning and then it's growing, and it's like I see it as the law of the universe that growth, progress is part of the divine plan, and we human beings are called to progress and grow, just like the creation. And as you've seen, you know, everything in the creation grows. There's a growth process happening. It's not just like everything is perfect, that's it, but there is also struggle, pressure, challenges involved in the growth process. So I don't think that struggle is necessarily, you need healthy pressure to grow and progress. That's also established by science. I mean, even our brains, our spirituality often grows in the dark, grows with pressure, grows through the spiritual fire. And absolutely, there is, at least from an Islamic perspective, it's not like everything is perfect and has been established and there's no job to do. No, by no means. You look around, and this is the reason why Muslims have a strong affirmation of a judgment day, is because we look around and see that so many things are not perfect, right? Our sense of justice, we see that a lot of things are unjust, right? Which basically calls us to work towards absolute justice, you know, which we, again, from a Muslim perspective, we affirm we can never fully express here. We see glimpses of justice. We see glimpses of balance and harmony, but it's not the full revelation of the divine. So from a theological perspective, these are only glimpses and shades and dim reflections, but we are working towards absolute justice. And for Muslims, again, this world is not a place where we will experience absolute perfect justice. We are trying as best to our abilities to be part of the work. You know, C.S. Lewis said he looks around, he sees a lot of injustice, but his sense of justice is still there. Like, why can't he just accept that things are just not right? So it's basically, there is a sacred imprint within us that is, you know, again, a divine call, work towards that divine perfection. I mean, you can't just stop and say everything is perfectly just. It's not. You know, if I look at past histories, human history, I'm over tears because there are so many things that are not rectified. You know, they are not this, it's deeply unjust, and so many people have not experienced justice in this world. So I think I'm drawn to be part of that work, as you said, to be a constructive and servant of God in this universe, to try to do the best of my ability to work towards that divine goal of establishing justice, at the same time knowing that it might not be accomplished in my own lifetime. But that doesn't mean that I quit. So I don't see myself disagreeing with you. I think Muslims are have that outlook on life, very constructive and proactive, that we all need to be part of the justice work. At the same time, looking around me, I see also a lot of goodness. It's not all injustice. It's not all evil. In fact, kindness is dominant, goodness is dominant, compassion is dominant in the world, I would say. Because a lot of people, they focus on the evil. You can get on your newsfeed and think there's only evil in the world. Everything is just bad. But we are actually called to be witness of God of goodness, and that we are trying to display and bear witness to God's goodness and compassion. And I'm told that. And the people in my life that I encounter are generally kind and loving and caring. But we often hear that a lot of people approach the world through a lens of evil, which is also not healthy. I think that's why nature comes to remind us, look up, see that still compassion, goodness is at work, and you can be part of that work too.
to our concluding time right now, and we are so grateful to Dr. Zainab and all our participants and these intriguing questions. I know it is a lifelong learning process. We are all learning, enriching, and especially Book of Psalm, which by God's grace through this forum is going to be another paradigm comparatively, where we are on an appreciative mode what we already have rather than what we don't have, or what we are conflicting rather than what we can celebrate together. And Book of Psalm, Dawood, and chanting and reciting, and all these are a fascinating monotheistic expression which we can cherish with each other. And here, Dr. Zainab, once again, thank you very much for reminding us these three Islamic sources of revelation: scripture, messenger scripture, and creation, and introducing us to the book of the universe. So that's great. And then the tradition, well, I have read Hadith Bukhari, but I overlooked this Monday and Thursday fast of David or Daud. Well, that's powerful. Thank you for bringing up that one. Then the act of ikra, yeah, that is powerful. Read and become a, and then your knowledge and struggle for the knowledge become a duty or a worship when you do in the name of the Lord. And then introducing us to the creative communication, and introducing Al Musawwir, Al Jabbar, Al Hafiz, and Al Jamil out of 99 names and beyond that, what God has given to us. Although three common themes which you shared with us: divine revelation, signs of God in creation, and prophetic prayer. And while you were reading, and verse 6, which is the last verse which you read, I find out that the image and the symbol of sun, its warmth, and the two images which has been used as a bridegroom and then as a wrestler who run in the race, and giving life and light to the whole creation. So that's powerful, and especially our friends, those who comment logoi to logos. So that's really fascinating. And our sister Sarah, that words are inadequate, that Jewish rabbinical tradition, and that's how where God has given us this signs and sound in the creation. Well, this is fascinating, and I cannot wait for the second one, which I'm going to announce right now, that you will receive an email. But also, here is Psalms in Interfaith Context. Please register. It is 20th October, same time. It will be Midrash Tahlim on Psalm 24. Oh, this is again one of the most powerful psalm. And our speaker will be Rabbi Burton Wysocki, Appleman, Professor Emeritus of Midrash and Interreligious Studies of Jewish Theological Seminary, New York, USA. Oh, that will be a fascinating conversation. So thank you very much, all of you, and your presence and your comment and your interaction is such a joy to be with all of us. Dr. Zainab, thank you, and all of our guests. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. It was a pleasure.